Yeah, Morgan, so a really sad update here. It's been over a week that investigators have now been trying to identify the body that was found inside this impounded Tesla. Police were called to a tow company here in Los Angeles because of a foul odor that was coming from a Tesla. The medical examiner's office says that this young woman was wearing a tube top, black leggings, a yellow metal chain bracelet, and stud earrings. She was described as having wavy black hair and weighing around 71 pounds, and that it appeared that she may have been dead inside that car for an extended period of time.
Not to downplay the idea that a 14-year-old girl being found in an upcoming singer's trunk is not interesting, it just didn't captivate me above, other stories. Probably because I didn't know who David was before all of this. And then my ears perked up because this private investigator named Steve Fisher, he found something. Now I'm intrigued. Now, at least I know it's just a matter of time until we, the public, will know who the last person was to move that Tesla before it was abandoned and subsequently towed, all while Celeste Rivas Hernandez was in that frunk. What Fisher found was actually what kickstarted my fascination with this case, and it sent me into a deep dive, just to quench my own curiosity. And now, after much digging, I think I have for you guys a theory that I can share. But first, for it all to make sense, for it all to tie together neatly, I will briefly, go over the things that I found interesting. And also, if you guys do not mind, if you please be intrigued by that like button and subscribe. Hey, if you like my backyard, if you like the vibe, I appreciate your view regardless. We're reminded all the time nowadays that the people that we trust to solve our cases might not have the proper resources to actually solve them effectively if we want to be kind, right? So for years, we've been seeing YouTube titles such as Reddit solves some decade-long case. And it's obvious, right? A million prying eyes are better than, say, two. Sometimes detectives overlook things. They overlook things all the time, right? And in this case, for example, the landlord of that $4 million mansion David was renting, well, he seems to believe that the LAPD couldn't crack an egg, let alone this murder case, and took it upon himself to hire a private investigator named Steve Fisher to look into what happened on his property in relation to the murder of Celeste. Now, here's the bombshell, right? Fisher, realizing that this was an upscale community, this was the Hollywood Hills, ladies and gentlemen, this place has security everywhere. Everybody has something like a Ring doorbell. So it was up to him basically to find the footage, and he did. Fisher basically indicates in an interview with Law and Crime that he can make out who was driving that Tesla. Although, after turning over the footage to the LAPD, he is not allowed to talk about it any further. He also makes sure to mention that after the car was moved, that's when David immediately went on tour. Now, because this home has already been raided, whatever the feds did not take was retained by the owner, which included electronics and DVR footage, which included footage of the entry and exit of this mansion. And upon review, Fisher confidently says that Celeste was not staying at that mansion. It didn't appear so. Now, they also had electronics. Now, I'm thinking iPads, cameras, but they would find thousands of photos. And these weren't just simple photos snapped with a phone. They were taken by high-end cameras or whatnot. In a lot of these photos, you can see David and Celeste. Now, this goes with the theory that she didn't live in that mansion because Fisher found that most of the pictures did not have the mansion as the backdrop. They were taken in downtown LA, most of the time. So he's assuming that David had provided her with another place to stay in downtown LA, which is also bizarre in a way because those two things aren't necessarily close to each other, but these are all just assumptions, right? Now, I know that this story has been done to death, but for the sake of those that don't know, let's just do a quick rundown on who David is. Let's just start with David. His full name is David Anthony Burke, and he started his career as basically streaming Fortnite under the screen name D4vd, the coolest. David found that if he played the most popular music along with his gameplay, he would get a lot of views, and this is by his own admission, okay? So he thought he found a hack. Once he was hit with that copyright hammer, okay, he would call his mother. In one instance, I heard he was crying to his mother. Maybe not true, but his mother would give him some sage advice. Hey, David, why don't you just go ahead and make your own music? Well, turns out this was amazing advice from his mother. And so he started making his own music to go along with his gameplay, and he also made it copyright free. And it turns out that these songs were hit as other Fortnite streamers started to use his copyright free songs to blast alongside their own gameplay. This not only made a name for David in the gaming space, it would also propel him into the music space as well, because he was just very talented. So in 2022, now just known as D4vd, he's not the coolest anymore, he released his song Romantic Homicide, which became a huge hit. And by May of 2023, he releases his debut EP called Petals to Thorns, and the snowball of his success was when he was invited to be in the SOS tour with none other than the singer SZA, who was red hot in the music industry at the time, which now exposed David, this young Fortnite streamer that made music, to hundreds of thousands of new fans. So by 2024 and 2025, David was headlining his own tours, and the rest, you could say, is music history until a 14-year-old girl is found dead in the trunk of his car. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was born on September 7 of 2010 in Southern California, growing up in Lake Elsinore, specifically Lakeland Village. Now, I Googled, what kind of conditions that she grew up in, and I think Google felt bad and they tried to be kind in their wording by saying there were inconsistencies in neighborhoods, and I'm just going to tell it to you straight, okay? This is a place where people lived out of mobile homes, single family homes, and even dilapidated apartments. Because when socioeconomic hurdles is used to describe your town, hey, you might be in the hood. So Celeste, as a kid, she was described by friends and neighbors as being sweet, intelligent, and hardworking, though it appeared that she dealt with a lot of trouble in her home life that led to multiple runaways starting around her early teen years. When she attended Lakeland Village Middle School, things seemed to only get worse, okay? It says that she had no major achievements, no extracurricular activities that are documented anyways, and to me personally, that's perfectly fine. I mean, it's an awkward time for a kid, right? Let alone having to deal with tension at home. And the things that plagued Celeste's schooling was her constant absences, of course, coinciding with her constant running away from home. Now, it seems obvious that the tension at home and her running away all the time, the internet is going to speculate that Celeste's behavior is directly impacted, by her home life. It had people even wondering if her family even cared that she went missing. The timeline itself is concerning, I have to admit. When you learn that Celeste was reported missing since April of 2024, meaning that she was missing for a year and a half before they found her body in David's trunk. I do believe that they cared about her, they just didn't know what to do with it. But we'll get into more of that, and you'll see why I think this. Okay, so now, I personally don't go on TikTok much, and that's not to say that people aren't, uncovering interesting facts, okay? So, leading into the final missing person report, okay, by the family, which was in early 2024, they reported her missing 3 times before that in that same year. They even had an emotional plea on Facebook about her whereabouts, and this is all coming from the LA Times, and sounds like a credible source to me, okay? So, the Daily Mail, this is me sifting through TikTok and verifying through those articles, okay? But I would have never found these unless for TikTok, so I'll give them credit for that. Okay, so the Daily Mail reports that in the span of 3 years, from 2022 up until now, okay, deputies visited the family's home 33 times. So no matter what those calls were about, and a lot of them were about Celeste, but some of them were not, okay? But still, that's an inordinate amount of time for the police to be called to your residence. So definitely, there is something wrong, right, with that household. And I'll say, interestingly, it was in 2022 that the internet started linking Celeste and David romantically through social media posts and streams. So I will say, it doesn't appear to be so out of pocket to think that, her running away more and more often is correlated with her meeting David. This footage here, you can't really tell who it is, but the police do believe this is the last footage of Celeste, and it caught her on the streets of her neighborhood. She's sometimes walking, sometimes jogging, and it was after this, the next time the world would see or know about Celeste, she was dead in the frunk of a Tesla. Celeste Rivas Hernandez died at 14 years old and was found just after her 15th birthday. Her connection to the singer David was online between 2022 to 2023 when she was just 11 via platforms like Discord and Instagram. And from what the internet could tell, as shocked fans and true crime buffs went over, that old footage and streams and pictures, the two were together. However, though, a few people seemed to know at the time that David was 18, an adult, right? And that Celeste was only 12. They knew that she was using fake IDs to pass as a 19-year-old USC student. Some people look young, yes. But Celeste, from all the pictures that I could find of her, she looks every bit her age. So as the world starts learning about these disturbing facts, okay, the grooming claims will now surface and are now widely accepted. What's shocking is that these claims started even before this whole story broke, but it wasn't taken seriously. They were just blips in an ever-moving comment section. A past comment on one of the videos said something to the effect that they couldn't wait till David's PDF ass is thrown in jail for messing with a kid, something to that effect. Some of his fans clearly knew that Celeste was a child, a runaway child at that. And so the stories would come out via family, friends, or whatnot that fit the timeline perfectly, that she ran away repeatedly to live with David. She would go home at times when her family was finally able to reach her or whatnot, begged her to come home, and she would come home. But, the pattern, it just continues until the day that she never came home. So here's what I think a 14-year-old girl from a volatile home, a disenfranchised community, will do when her lifeline is being pulled away. And I will explain, okay? If their relationship began way back in 2022, that means she's 12. And disturbingly, her birthday is in September. Majority of that year is gone already. So it's possible at one point she was 11. So to start that year, 2022, David started to heat up in his streaming and his music career. But by mid-year was when he released Romantic homicide. And this just totally changed the entire landscape, okay? It shot his career in this upward trajectory. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is actually on behalf of Celeste, who was there when David was just this Fortnite streamer, right? So you come from a place you do not like, okay? You're always running away to be with your mysterious boyfriend, okay? Someone that your own family doesn't know except that his name is David. So already you don't feel close enough to your own family to fill them in on something that's pretty major in a 14-year-old's life. You know, a lot of young people, they clearly would rather be hanging out with their boyfriend or girlfriend, you know, other than their family. For someone like Celeste, who doesn't even like her household, she would rather be with David, her boyfriend, right? He was safe, he was fun, and he seemed to like her a lot, right? Maybe even love her. You know, she hopes. So what does a figure like David become to a young girl in this situation, right? He becomes her lifeline. He is her everything. He is her way out of a bad situation, and she loves him and holds on basically for dear life. And she would witness her boyfriend excel to unimaginable heights, right? In the blink of an eye. Now he is busier than ever. He's becoming very successful. David literally has the means now to fix her situation. But there's a caveat, sadly. He isn't all hers anymore, okay? She has to accept that she has to share David and his talents with the world now. But it's not so simple, right? Because now he has new people around him, and some of them are even wearing suits. And would it be hard to imagine, they start whispering in David's ear that, hey man, you can't be seen hanging around this child. You're 20 years old now. The optics would be horrible if you ever want to be a star. So now Celeste notices that David is drifting away. She had to be okay with sharing him with the world, but now it started to feel like she was losing him altogether. I mean, what was she supposed to do now? Go back to the place that she hated after placing all her hopes in life with David? What should a 14-year-old girl do? Now, there's a million answers to that. But what I do say with confidence is that she will try to her best ability to hold on to that special thing that she has. Which brings me to the murmurs after her body was found that she was pregnant. Now, the autopsy disproved this, however, but I would say some misinformation might have a grain of truth, okay? So, what if, in desperation, Celeste decides to tell David that she was pregnant, you know? I mean, we've heard stories like this before. In every situation, it was a woman trying to hold on to someone they cared about. What if this lie made it to the ears of those in the inner circle, right? That lie would fester there, being mulled around until it blossomed into a bad idea. And by mid-2025, right, David's headlining tours and everything seemed amazing. But behind closed doors, right, who knows? Did the pressures of fame clash with his secret relationship? I mean, did someone in his camp decide that she was a liability? Which brings me into the manner in which she was found. She was dismembered. Something like that has to be done by a different kind of human being, right? And sadistic is the perfect word here. She was dismembered, head severed from torso, torso severed from her lower half, placed inside a plastic bag, stuffed into a black hold-all bag, which is just basically a fancy word for duffel bag, and then placed into that frunk belonging to David. According to Fisher, the private investigator we talked about earlier, once that Tesla was moved by this particular someone, the tour kicked off immediately, which leads me to think that the person who did it needed to be on this tour as well. Or why else do it just before? Okay, so since this is only my theory, I will give the most likely possibility in my personal scenario, okay? So I'm just going to say off the bat, it's completely possible that David did it himself or hired someone to do it, but David knows that it's happening. He has something dark in him, right? Is that not obvious? Is that not what he's trying to portray in everything that he produces? His music is moody. His videos are just morose. In one of his videos, he literally has people put a body into the trunk. And you know what? That just feels a little bit too on the nose for some people's liking, right? Here's a trait. Argue with me if you want, but I know this for a fact, okay? This trait have not been mastered by young people. They have not mastered the art of patience. They could be a little patient, but so far, not very. Which leads me to assume that David's big 4-month tour called Withered, this was the tour that he was gonna go on right after that Tesla was moved. I think that David just could not be seen with Celeste anymore. And for that fact, he did not want her on that tour. And I'm thinking, he told her as much. Broke her heart, right? And so, guess what Celeste decides to tell him? With her back against the wall, she told him, I'm pregnant. And now David, he believes her. And she will go on to tell him that, she's gonna keep the baby. So now he was connected with her forever. And from this, a plot is made to end her life. And eventually, she's made to fit into that bag, into his frunk. And it's either him or he gets someone to move that car, that day to what he feels is a safer spot. I mean, to a young person, 4 months isn't a long time, right? Leaving a decomposing body in 85-degree weather was done on a whim, without much thought. Something he felt he could deal with after the tour. He didn't know that car would be an eyesore for his high-end neighbors in this upscale neighborhood. Imagine his surprise when just a month into the tour, someone called to complain about his Tesla as being abandoned and causing a public nuisance. But, getting towed is no problem, right? That's no big deal. The big deal was learning that double bagging a dead body and leaving it in a really hot trunk isn't going to keep the smell of human decay from seeping into every crevice of that Model X. So once the tow yard smelled this smell, they called the police. Now, if David had a little more patience, he would have learned what the autopsy confirmed: that she was never pregnant in the first place. And that's pretty much all I'm willing to speculate in this case, because I would say that's the most human angle I could manage. It is still an ongoing case, and let me know. Doesn't it seem like a very interesting route that I'm giving you? Plausible, even, to me at least. So, at this point in the case, Celeste Hernandez's body was in such a severe stage of decomposition that it was just complicating the determination of her actual cause of death. So at the moment, the coroner has listed her cause of death as deferred, as more tests need to be run. Now also, there are murmurs of an overdose, because that mansion was a party house and they've been known to do drugs, I guess. But then she was chopped up, okay? The dismembering thing is still there. So I'm also thinking, even if it came back as an overdose, it was a overdose on purpose, not by her, by whoever. And we'll get those toxicology reports, they say in months, okay? So everything's gonna take time. We'll know why she died and who moved the car. And so we wait. Patience, right? Okay, so I will say whether the medical examiner rules her death as an overdose, strangulation, whatever, right? They found her body in pieces. Someone had to have done that. And it's nefarious regardless, and David at this point is a PDF regardless. His home was raided, okay? His tour was canceled. His career seems to be canceled, okay? I can't predict that. Crazier things have happened. But he has not been charged with anything. It's important to say that. He's just a person of interest. Everything I've said are my own thoughts, just out loud, okay? Anyways, go make your home environment a loving, safe place where your kids actually enjoy coming home to, okay? Go protect the ones that you love, and don't forget to love the ones that protect you.